Good Friday morning. It's WKRK, Murphy, North Carolina, 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and online at country.am. And on Fridays, it is customary at 11:05 to welcome Sheriff Derek Palmer from the Cherokee County
Good
Sheriff's
morning.
Office.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well this morning.
It's Friday.
Yes, and it's good that it's Friday because this has been a long week.
It really has. Before this show, I was like thinking, were we here last week? Did we skip a week? But it has been so long. But yeah, we had the sheriff on and
Right.
Robin Caldwell on last week. But it seems like that was like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it seemed like a long time. I was the reason I was a little distracted. I was looking down. We're down to the 8 days, 12 hours, 52 minutes, and 46 seconds to Christmas.
Wow.
Got it down pat, right?
Down pat.
So we'd have all the kids
countdown
ready
to
to look for
Christmas.
Santa Claus coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just people, the sheriff's usually on his phone the whole time he's on this show, so distracted.
Yeah. No, I
he-
generally put it up. But
Yeah.
my wife don't let me have my phone out a lot when, especially around dinner time and those type of things. She says no, all phones go in the basket, and we're having
All
some-
phones in the basket.
Yeah.
All right. So some good quality
Right.
family time.
Yeah, when our kids
That's good.
were growing up, we would never allow them to have their cell phones out while we're eating and those type of things, or in the restaurant, or
We didn't
whatever.
have that problem when we
no,
were
we
kids,
didn't
did
when we were growing up. But when they had friends over, it was kind of a shock value to their friends because their friends would have their phones out. And we're like, no, you have to put your phones in the basket too.
Structure and rules. And
There
that's
you
always
go.
a good thing to have. And
It is.
makes
I
good
need a little
citizens.
time away from the phones and stuff, though. I finally got to a point 2 years in now. I finally got to a point to where I kind of silence my phone at times and of a night. And
Can you show me how to do that?
there you go. Yeah, you need to learn how to silence.
As
or-
mine just went off as we
Right.
were talking there.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have to spend a little time with your family and a little time to unwind and get away from things and
We
all
spend
that.
so much time with technology now.
We
it's,
do.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing that we spent our entire lives without cell phones, and now we can't. If we leave home without it, we have to turn around and go back and get it.
It's true. We do.
Right.
It's just one of those realities. And
Yeah.
it's like the sheriff said, Christmas is next weekend.
8 days, a little over 8 days away, and I hope everybody's got your Christmas shopping done and has a safe and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And
Jot myself a note here. Start Christmas shopping.
yeah, you better
Okay.
you better put me on that list too. There, put me on the nice list, not the naughty list.
All right, the nice list.
Yeah,
All
there
right.
you go. But no, we're just this is my favorite time of year, and the song "It's a Wonderful Time."
Yeah.
It's the most wonderful time of the year. It really is for me. I like Christmas, and I like this whole Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year season. It's just to me a special time. So I just enjoy it every year. And
I've
if we
been
can't
in-
laugh and have fun, we don't live.
I've been enjoying our Singing News Radio 25 Days of Christmas.
Right.
When the program director, Greg Goodman, sent me an email that that's what he was thinking about doing, I thought,
Right.
is that going to be too much Christmas music? But I've heard all kinds of new songs that I've never
Right.
heard that are Christmas related.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed
There's a lot
the-
out there.
Yeah.
I think every major artist that's recorded a Christmas album at some point in time. So.
So I've been introduced to a lot of new songs.
I will say this before we get on in the program, though. A lot of people ask me about when I was pastoring a church and kind of, do I miss it and those kind of things. There's one thing that I absolutely miss when I was pastoring, and one is that every Christmas Eve we would do Christmas plays and those type of things at the church, and I would sit down on the floor with all the kids and read the Christmas story. And I would read it to the kids and talk about the Christmas story and all those kind of things. And then we would have Santa Claus come in and open presents and all those kind of things. I guess just that little extra time of just being in the floor with the kids and just letting them crawl on you and ask questions and, and whatever's going on. That I do miss that. That's something that I think about quite often.
That is pretty neat.
Yeah.
Unless they have the flu.
Right.
And there's a lot of sickness
And
going
I
on.
did get my flu shot yesterday.
All right.
My
Got the-
wife made me go get my flu shot. So me and her went down to the health department and got her
She
shots.
sounds like a very smart lady.
She keeps me in line. I tell you, she is a wonderful woman, and I'm not bragging because she's mine. Well, I guess I am, but I don't know of any better woman out there, and I think it takes a very special woman to kind of keep track of me and keep me in line. So
She takes away your cell phone and
Right.
makes you get your flu shot, and
somebody asked me the other day about what my plans were for the weekend and for Christmas season and different things going on at church. And I finally just looked at them and I said, when I wake up in the morning, my wife tells me where to go and what time to be there, and that's just where I go.
Have you noticed your schedule is a little busier now that you're sheriff?
It is a little bit busy, as a matter of fact, one thing, as far as the sheriff's office and things, I will be speaking at Abundant Life Church Sunday night. There on old 64 going out toward Hayesville up on the hill up there above the Peachtree. Yes, the Peachtree Dollar Store. I'll be speaking there Sunday night at 6. So anybody like to come by and take part in those services, we'll be glad to have you. So I don't know quite what I'm going to be doing yet, but I'll be speaking about something.
All right.
There you go.
And today you're having company at the detention center?
Right. Yeah, they're at the sheriff's office. We just kind of doing a little drop in, and having people just, if you want to come by and say hello kind of thing. And so, we put invitations out to a lot of people in the communities and just different people that's helped us and supported us and, community leaders and that type of thing. And if you didn't get an invitation, I certainly apologize. There's so many people out there that helps,
Yes.
and there's so many people that's involved in things and helps the sheriff's office do what we need to do. It's hard to remember everybody and get everybody involved with that. But your invitation's now, so if you didn't get a formal
All right.
invitation, would like to come, drop by, and we'd be more than happy to have you.
Very good. Let's talk heroin.
Oh, yeah.
All right. There's a newspaper article this past week, and it's just a growing problem.
It is.
Not just in our community, but all over our
From
area.
what I've been hearing from talking to other sheriffs and even sheriffs down in Georgia and over in Tennessee, it's a growing problem in the entire area. This was something that we've not really had to face a whole lot. In the spring of, I believe it was 2015, spring of 2015, we had a heroin outbreak where we had several overdoses and just right in a row over a matter of a few months. And we made some arrests, put some people in jail that was dealing, and it kind of dried that up, and we've not really experienced it again until recently. But this past summer, the end of the summer, fall, and early winter, it has really exploded in the area. One of the contributing factors, there's a lot of factors that's involved in it, but one of the contributing factors is the demands that have been put on doctors as far as their prescription writing and the way they write prescriptions. For years and years, all the way through the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, we were having epidemic problems with prescription pills on the street and scripts being sold and people filling their prescriptions and selling those pills on the street. And a lot of problems arose out of that. And so over the last 10 to 15 years, there has been a real crackdown on the prescription writing process and on pills and diversion tactics on the street from diverting those pills from their intended use. And with the North Georgia bust and the things that happened down there with those doctors and with the hospital and all those things, all of North Georgia has changed their prescription writing practices and the way they write prescriptions in Georgia. And so it has really put a clamp down on the pills that were on the street and the availability of pills. But with everything, there comes a two-edged sword. There's for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I did remember something from school, right?
That's right.
So there, with every action, there is a reaction. And so what happened was with the clamp down on the prescription pills and the prescription writing process, people who were on the street that were addicted to opioids and were addicted to those heroin-based pills were not able to get their pills now, or at least not to the level that they would like, not to a level to where they're gets a belt tolerance over the years and they need a lot more than a normal person would. And so they weren't getting the same effects, the same highs, and the availability wasn't there. So a lot of these people have turned to the heroin. They have turned to buying heroin off the street. But as we also talked about, for every action, there's also a reaction with this too. And so with buying heroin off the street, there's a problem that occurs with that, is the fact of that you have no idea of what purity of heroin you're buying. And a lot of people don't realize how this works, but when it comes from Colombia and comes from the Mexico and other places, and fillers into the United States. These dealers that gets these large shipments of this stuff, they cut it down with other chemicals, with other powders and other things, so they can have more to distribute and make a better profit off of it. Well, every time that changes hands and goes to a different level of dealer, it goes through that cut process again, and other things are added to it, and the purity of that heroin keeps getting less and less and less, all the way down to the consumer.
So their methods are not FDA approved.
Or they are definitely not FDA approved. And a lot of things that are put into this heroin are things such as fentanyl. There's other chemicals and powders that they may use, starches and different things they may mix this with to get the look of a quantity of heroin, but the purity of the heroin is very low. The problem with that is if you're a user on the street and you use a certain amount of heroin and that's what your normal usage is, you may continue to use that over a period of time. But if your supplier gets it from somewhere else, or you go to a different supplier, or you get it from a friend or something of that nature, that purity may be different. And where you were buying something that may have a very, very low purity, now you may be buying something that has a very, very high purity. And so if you use that same amount that you've always been using, that sends your body into shock, and it's an overdose, almost an immediate overdose. It's a depressant, and it mixing it with fentanyl and alcohol and other things has further depressants involved in that. And so it will actually slow the heart rate, slow the breathing down, slow everything down in the body until it quits working. Well, when you overdose yourself on it and use these pure amounts that you're not used to, it's almost an instantaneous shutdown of the body.
Oh, wow. And
to where, if you inject or in your veins and it courses through your veins over a matter of a few seconds, then all of a sudden your body just goes through a shock and starts shutting down. And so it's very, very dangerous, and it's very, very easy to overdose on this. And so we're trying to get the word out to everybody through education process and trying to make sure that people, especially our younger folks that's not dealt with this, that's not been around it, that's never used it, to stay away from it and not even try it. Meth is a big problem. A lot of people overdose on meth, and it causes them to do crazy things and hurt themselves and all that. But heroin is literally something you could use that will can kill you instantly. And so we need to make sure that people understand that, they understand the dangers of that, and that they stay away from it and not deal with it.
All right. Kind of a dumb question here on my part, but what exactly is heroin? Is it a liquid, a powder? Or
what we've been seeing in our area is more of a powder that can be heated up and melted down into a liquid.
So it can come in different forms?
It can come in different forms. It can be mixed with different things. But it comes from a plant, and it's derived out of a plant, and that is processed down through that. But the powder form is what we've been seeing a lot of, and if you look at it, you can't really tell the difference between it and cocaine and methamphetamine powders and those type of things just by looking. But they do also have different forms of that, where they have to a brownish color to a dark brown color, even black. And I'm sure you've probably heard the black tar heroin that you've heard on the streets. And so, it could be all ranges, all colors, but basically it's melted down and heated down into a liquid form and then injected into the veins at that point through syringes.
So if parents, how would they recognize this at home if their kids were bringing it in? Or
Well, any powder that you see, or rocks, or crystals, or liquids, or anything like that that's in strange containers, whether it's in medicine bottles or whether it's in plastic bags or candy wrappers or whatever it may be in, any unknown powder in strange wrappings and strange containers needs to be investigated, needs to be looked into as to what that is. A lot of times we will find medicine bottles with just full of water, and basically what that is to flush needles out with, to clean their needles and flush needles and stuff out. So those type of things is the items kind of be looking for, and burnt spoons and aluminum foil and those type of things that looks like it's been heated or to high temperatures. Those are all things to be looking for. But as far as your children and your family members, as far as them personally, the things to be looking for is extreme behavior changes.
Right.
And they could go in opposite directions. There's no certain thing. In other words, if you have a child that is very outgoing, that is very enthusiastic and energetic and has a lot of friends and those kind of things, now all of a sudden they are secluded to their room. They won't talk to anybody. They don't have friends anymore. They just had a complete change in personality. Those are things to investigate. Doesn't mean they're doing drugs. It's just something to look at.
Right.
And then the opposite's true. If you have someone who's a recluse and a child that's a recluse that doesn't have a lot of friends, is not very outgoing, that doesn't participate in a lot of things, and now all of a sudden they have tons of friends and a lot of people, and they're coming and going and spending a lot of time away from home and coming in late at night and those type of things. Like I say, that doesn't mean they're using drugs. It's just something to look at. It's just something to investigate into. And the same thing applies for schoolwork, for grades. If you have kids who are making good grades and they're good students and not having any troubles in the school, but now they're having disciplinary actions and now their grades are slipping and things are falling within school. Like I say, it's not a full proof that they're a drug addict, but what it does mean is it's something you need to look at and something to investigate. So there are just a lot of things that you have to look at the entire package to see what's going on and make a determination from that.
All right.
Yeah.
Back in our days, I think it was probably high school before we even had any kind of introduction to drugs exist.
Right.
Now that age has gone down quite significantly.
I had I say this tongue in cheek, but I had a traumatic experience several years ago when I worked for the Drug Task Force. I got a call to go, and I don't want to give you the name because I don't want to have a bad reputation, but they're really a good place and a good provider of education. But I got called to go to a Head Start program to speak about drugs. And when I went there, I thought,
Head Start, that's before kindergarten,
yeah, that's
right?
before kindergarten. That's like 4-year-olds.
4-year-olds.
And so I was like, what am I going to talk about drugs with 4 and 5-year-olds? What? And on my way there, driving there, I was thinking, well, I might talk about medicine in mom and dad's cabinet and, unknown liquids, sitting around, don't drink stuff, whatever. And I thought, well, I'll just kind of do something like that and kind of talk to these kids and have a conversation with them about those type of things. And when I got there, these 4 and 5-year-olds, suddenly it was a traumatic experience for me because suddenly I realized why the teacher wanted me to come talk to them about drugs. These kids, some of these kids had grown up in homes where drug use was prevalent, and 4 and 5-year-olds could tell me the price of drugs on the street. They could tell me the different drug names and what kind of drugs they were. They could tell me the slang terms for prescription medication. They were as knowledgeable about the drug business and drug usage
at age 4
and 5 that most adults would know about. And that was really an eye-opener to me of what is really going on in homes and what's really going on in our communities around here. And that was probably, I'd say that's probably 10 years ago now or longer when that happened.
And to me, that's disturbing because those kids are growing up and that is just normal.
Right.
I mean, that's not...
And glad you brought that up because that's one of the things that we're seeing even through, not just through the sheriff's office, but in society in general, is that with drug use and the use of illegal narcotics and prescription medications is not shocking to our youth.
Right.
It's nothing that it seems like it's lost its taboo. When we were growing up as someone, which the worst I ever saw growing up in Murphy High School in the 80s, that I personally saw was marijuana. But if someone had marijuana, they were labeled a drug dealer, and you didn't talk to them, didn't associate with them, you didn't do anything with them, and it was they were kind of shunned off into a corner somewhere. But today, in today's society, with kids in school, even good kids, even kids that are straight A students that are not involved in drugs, that have nothing to do with drugs, when you talk to them about kids in school that are doing drugs and other people, they're like, yeah, I know that. Yeah, so-and-so's doing drugs, or I'm friends with them, and yeah, they use, but it ain't no big deal. I don't think about it, So even with the good kids that are not involved in those type of things, there's not that taboo of it that we had growing up, and that's scary in society that it's become so normal
and accepted.
That people don't think that much about it. And so it's very important that we get that education out there and talk to the kids about these type of things and what's happening with that. There was a little piece in the article this week in the Scout about education and the school system and those type of things. I will tell you that the school is all aboard and they're all for drug education and getting in the schools and doing those things within the schools, and they've been very, very good to work with. The issue with the schools is they have state mandated curriculum they have to teach,
Right.
and there's hours of that they have to teach and testing they have to do. And so the challenge within the school system is where do we find time to do this? Where do we get this education in there? Because the state is mandating all these other things we have to do.
Right.
And so how do we get that within the school system to get that education there? So all those are things that we're trying to hash out and work out as far as what that process will be and how to get that in there. What age groups do we need to target? Do we need to concentrate mostly on elementary age kids, middle school kids, high school kids? What is our target group? Where do we need to go? So once we get these details and all these type of things worked out, then we can have a better understanding of how education will help and work. One of the problems is with like DARE, for example, the DARE program that's been around forever since the early 80s. The early 80s forever, that's kind of makes me feel old, don't it? But
we're getting on up there, Sheriff.
yeah, but even with the DARE program that's out there, it's not an evidence-based program, which means there is no real understanding of whether the program works or doesn't work. There's no tracking as to afterwards of kids when they've gotten older that said, yeah, DARE kept me out from using drugs, or I didn't pay attention to it and use drugs anyway, or there's no real tracking to that. So even once we get into schools and do those type of things for our kids, then we still have to look at the type of programs and see if we can find programs that work, that are proven to work. So there's just a whole lot of things. There's a whole lot more into the education component than just a deputy showing up at school and talking about drugs.
Right.
I mean, there's a whole relationship building process, and there's time for the school to do what they need to do and make time available for these other things. And so the school's a lot like the sheriff's office. We're just under the gun and under pressure to get certain things we have to get done that's mandated by the state. And so we want to do the best we can for our community and kids. We're just trying to figure out how to fit all this in here and how to make it work.
I know some school systems take the drug dogs up and down the hallways
Right.
and searching. Does that happen here?
It does happen here, and we basically have an open invitation from the superintendent and the principals of the schools is to basically come whenever you'd like to come. One of the things that we try to do is work with the schools though and make sure that they don't have some type of testing or something going on when we
Right.
come, because we don't want to disrupt the education process. We're not there to try to disrupt that process and cause anxiety to kids and cause them to score badly on the test or
Right.
other things, that'll be crucial to their education. So all those things are kind of coordinated with the schools, and you have your school resource officers that are company police. Their chief Brent Harden it runs that. So Brent works with the sheriff's office pretty well about inviting us to come to certain schools at certain days and scheduling those things. So we're like I say, we do that. I will tell you that more often than not, we walk through schools and don't find anything. The dogs don't alert on sometimes they may alert on a bag or a vehicle or something. But most of the time, it may be something was there in the past, but we don't actually find things on
Right.
campus.
Which is a good thing.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. And we have from time to time, recovered drugs from campus and those type of things. But I will tell you the vast majority of the time it is it's a deterrent because we don't find things there. So that's a testament to our kids and that's a testament
right.
to our schools, about the vigilance they do and the hard work that they do there and the importance they put on for having drug-free campuses and those type of things. And also with that, just give a shout out to Jenny Irwin, who has worked tirelessly at the school system for drug and alcohol awareness and trying to bring that education component to the schools and work with the kids within the schools to get that awareness out there to not use drugs and tobacco and alcohol and those type of things. So she does a good work there, and we applaud her for that.
Well, with you being sheriff and seeing the kind of traffic that goes in and out of the detention center, is there a certain age group that seems to be more apt to try the really hard illegal drugs?
We're seeing more right now into the early 20s, early 30s, that kind of that 10-year range, kind of 22, 23 up to 32, 33, kind of that age group that are kind of more of in the heroin and those type of things. Meth kind of spans all generations. It kind of all the way down to late teens, early 20s, all the way up to 50, 60, 70-year-olds that were involved in methamphetamine. Marijuana the same way. It spans all the way down to, middle school, high school age kids, all the way up to 60, 70-year-old.
It does surprise me, though, when I go to the detention website
Right.
and look at some of the ages, some of senior citizens doing some things that you would think
Right.
are things that young people would
Well,
be doing.
going back to that education program, and people ask the question why, with other states legalizing marijuana and with these things that are going on, why is North Carolina still so hard on this, and why, as a sheriff's office, do you still pursue, people who selling marijuana and those type of things? And my response is, from that education component, it's the same as the heroin. When you buy marijuana from the street and you buy it from somebody or it's given to you by a friend, you don't know if that marijuana is laced with cocaine or heroin or fentanyl or what may be in that marijuana. We actually had a spell here a while back where people were talking about them going crazy, and we had just tons of crazy people running around doing crazy things. And when we tracked this down, we found out that the majority of it was coming from marijuana that was laced with formaldehyde.
Oh.
And if you're familiar with formaldehyde, that's what all the dead creatures at the chemistry labs sitting in, to keep them from dying or from decaying.
Right.
And so a lot of there's using that formaldehyde a lot of times to dip the marijuana in and soak it to give that extra high, that extra buzz. And basically what it's doing is poisoning people. And
Wow.
So even with marijuana, you post something about a marijuana arrest or marijuana bust, and immediately you get these thousands of responses of leave the stoners alone, and legalize marijuana, and ain't you got better things to do.
I've seen one or two of those.
Yeah. And, sheriff's office ought to be concentrating on real drugs instead of marijuana. But what they don't realize is a lot of those marijuana arrests are a combination of arrests with cocaine and heroin and even laced marijuana with these chemicals. So, we are doing our job and we are fighting those things that are out there. And so as long as marijuana is illegal and as long as they're poisoning our kids and as long as they're lacing it with things, we'll continue to go after it and continue to arrest them.
I don't think a lot of people realize that the whole lacing with other drugs
Right.
too is a component, and there's a lot more to it than just collecting
Right.
sales tax.
Yeah, it is. There is. And if you go back and you look at Colorado and some of these places out west that's legalized marijuana, it's been going on for a year or so now, a couple of years maybe, that has legalized this. You can go back and you can see where their crime statistics have risen. You can see where their overdoses have risen. You can see where all these bad things that are going on in these states. And yeah, they're getting some tax revenue off of it. They're getting some money coming back into the state. But look at the health care. Look at all these other things that it's costing the state because of these. And so you can look at all the revenue all day long if you want to, but when you do a cost-benefit analysis of what's the problems that come along with this, right, I would contend that the states are worse off for doing it than they were for legalizing it. So, but as like with other things in life, some people want to just put blinders on and see the things they want to see and don't
Right.
want to look at the rest of the issues that are out there. But with the drug issues and things that are going on, the question is asked for me quite often, what is the answer? And I'll just be honest with you, as far as sheriff's office, as far as government, I'm not really sure what the answer is. But I do believe a component of that answer, and a huge component of that answer, is just education and getting that awareness out there of what's happening and what's going on, and spending time with our kids and encouraging our kids not to be involved in this and not to be around it and view it differently than what other kids are viewing it.
Right. A lot of times just an arrest isn't going to solve the problem, because if the person gets out and continues the same behavior,
Right.
then there's just an interruption in the process.
There is. And what we use the arrest process for a lot of times, especially on possession cases and paraphernalias and those type of things, is if we have a person who is high on drugs and they're causing problems at home and they're you can't talk to them and they're out of their head because they're high, what the arrest does a lot of times is it gets them into jail to go through a detox program, and it gets them to a place to where they're rational thinking, to where you can at least have a conversation with them, and you can, and parents and family and officers can actually just sit down with these people and have a conversation with them and say, okay, look where you're at, look what's going on, look what's happened because of this. We're giving you an opportunity or trying to help you make a change in your life. Then it's back on that person as to whether they want to take advantage of that.
And there's a lot of really good people that once they're not high,
Right.
they're really good.
They're really good
and
people.
you can talk to them.
Yeah, and a lot of people, once they get to that place of getting clear thought and clear mind, they understand where they're at, and they do want the treatment. They do want the help. They do want to put that behind them and go on with life. So not resting is not always a bad thing for a family member. Sometimes it can be a good thing.
It could be the eye opener that
It can
that,
be.
that needs
It
to
can
be
be.
there.
We've, as a matter of fact, I had a guy in jail, and I'm not going to mention his name because I didn't get his permission to. I don't want to embarrass him or cause problems for him. But he was arrested on drug charges, several times on drug charges and trafficking charges. And this week at the sheriff's office, we had a mother bring her child in who was experimenting with drugs, and kind of did a scared straight tour through the jail and kind of saw what life was like and talked to the inmates and those kind of things. Well, this particular inmate, one of the detention officers said, I want to bring him out and talk to him. And I was kind of leery. I thought, I don't know about that because he's been arrested multiple times, you know. But when he came out and talked to this young man, he explained to him, you know, why he was there and what was happening. And he told the young gentleman, he said, I want you to look at these guards right here. He said, I don't like them. He said, I don't like being here. I'm locked up in a cell, you know, anywhere from 21 to 23 hours a day. And he said, I don't like it. I don't like being back there. But he said, son, he said, I'm going to tell you one thing it's done for me is spending time back there locked up. He said, it's caused me to open a Bible and read it, and it's caused me to look into it and make some decisions in my life. And he said, while I was in here, he said, I've asked the Lord to save me. And he said, I've a different person than I was when I was locked up. And he said, I'm going to have to serve some time and spend some time in here. But he said, you've got a choice to make, and you can do things differently with your life. And so, you know, even jail can be a good thing, and it can be a good thing for people to kind of get their head on straight, to make some decisions, to make some life-altering decisions for themselves. And so we're always liking those stories and always liking those things that we hear coming out of the jail. And we had another inmate that was out last week who was out doing some putting up some tents and some different things for some churches, and the pastor there spent some time praying with him and talking with him, and he announced the other day that he had made a change in his life and he'd gotten saved, and you know, and it's time for him to be a different person. And so we're seeing good things coming out of there and seeing good things coming out of the jail. And so like I say, it's not always a bad thing to have your loved one arrested.
All right. Well, I see our time has gone by way quickly. We wanted to say go Bulldogs as they're heading to Chapel Hill today. And one thing we always notice, no matter who from our 1A section goes to the state championship, all of our communities pull together to pull a victory from the Smoky Mountain Conference.
I've been out to the Triangle several times to watch Swain play and Robbinsville play and Murphy play, and it seems like when they're out there, we just like to go support them.
When it gets to this point, we're just one big mountain family.
There you go.
All right, Sheriff, thank you very much.
Have a great day and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well. It's WKRK Radio in Murphy, North Carolina. Your weather forecast next.